And we're back, and I'm joined here with the entire family, and there is a reason for that. So all over Rotterdam, where we're traveling for a month, we've been seeing these cargo electric bikes. There's an Urban Arrow, there's an Urban Arrow, there's another one. With huge front baskets. I did reach out to Urban Arrow, and unfortunately, they weren't able to host me at their headquarters, so we decided to take matters into our own hands. And we're going to be renting one. We're actually going to head to the bike shop and we'll see if we can rent an Urban Arrow and take it around Rotterdam and do some exploring.
Curious to see if the whole family fits in one bike.
Lenny, how excited are you to take the tram there?
Oh, it's here, Lenny.
It's here.
If you're familiar with this channel, we love cargo electric bikes. In fact, we've reviewed a bunch of budget cargo electric bikes, so we want to see how the Urban Arrows stack up to all those offerings. All right, with that, let's see if the bike shop lets us rent an Urban Arrow for the day. We're good. All right, and the person in the store helping us told us that this could hold 250 kilograms, so I think we're gonna be good, right, kids?
Yep, here we go.
Okay, here we are.
This is a little scary.
Definitely feel the weight up there.
Thank you very much.
We'll see how turning goes. All right. Okay, we're gonna have to get through this gate though.
Just took my first maiden voyage with the Urban Arrow. I was a bit nervous. It looks, I think, more intimidating than it feels. It took just half a block for me to feel comfortable riding with my 30-pound son in the front, who's taking a little Cheerio break over there. So, starting from the looks of the bike, this bike looks cool. Very, very cool. Feel for the bike, starting with the seat and the handlebars, upright seated position, felt extremely comfortable. The grips are very nice. You can tell this is a high-end bike. The shifting is not your typical shifting. I'm sure Ryan has some technical terms to call it, but it just slides. It's not like a clunk, clunk, clunk. It's a slide shifter. The bell, very important for me. Awesome bell. Like awesome. Turn radius. I thought I was gonna be a little sketchy turning, and your instincts just take over, and I think it's really fine. I am 5'5", and this looks like it's almost as low as it goes. And I felt pretty comfortable. It's got a nice step through, but I still felt like I could extend my leg close to full length, and it felt good. The brakes had plenty of power for the big bike. You do just have to think a little bit differently because your front end is long. That's just not what your brain's wired to think. When I was pedaling, I kept it typically on the Eco, which is the lowest. I would go up to Tour or Sport a little bit. The harder I pedaled, the faster the bike went. I took it up a teeny tiny hill I found down the road, and I could feel the motor kick in a little more as I pushed the pedals harder. I don't know the actual weight, but this feels lighter than, for instance, the Radwagon or the Packagini. Also, I think because everything's lower to the ground, it feels more stable. It doesn't feel like we're gonna tip quite as easily. I love that the kids are in front of me. You can see them, you can talk to them. That's by far the biggest advantage in my mind. I love this kickstand. I don't struggle with the Radwagon kickstand, but I am a bit rough with it, and this seems a lot more smoother. I don't know what colors the Urban Arrows come in, but the Radwagon and Packagini have far more diverse color options. Well, I want to say the one we don't have, the Urban Arrow. It just feels premium. It's a premium product. It's a nicer ride. I think this probably could haul more overall. This is super deep. It feels smoother. Even as a passenger, this felt smoother compared to the Radwagon. Handled bumps better.
Next, I wanted to give you some of my own personal perspective on the Urban Arrow and talk about my thoughts compared to the other cargo electric bikes that I'm most used to riding back in the United States. I'll also give you a close-up of all the components on the Urban Arrow. But before we get into that, I just want to give a huge shout out to Insta360, who recently hooked me up with a Insta360 One RS. It's actually the camera you're watching me on today. And now for a few months, I've been using this camera for all of our 360 footage and some of our first-person riding footage as well. And when I had to choose a camera to bring to the Netherlands, it was kind of a no-brainer to bring this camera because it's modular. I can just swap out the lenses, have the 360 camera, and also give you first-person riding footage with just the single lens as well. So definitely be using their cameras going forward. Again, thanks to Insta360 for making our videos just a little bit better. With that, let's get into the walk around and also try to call out some of the things that I have really been appreciating about this electric bike. Now, pricing may vary a little bit because these are sold at local dealers, both across the US and of course here in the Netherlands as well. At the bike shop, she did tell me that this one is right around 5,200 euros, which I actually didn't think was too bad with something that's so unique like this. Obviously, this isn't going to be an electric bike that everyone purchases, so inherently it is going to cost a little bit more. So I didn't think that price was too bad. Now I did look some pricing up in the United States, and it looks like the base model like this one here can be had for about $6,000, but it goes all the way up to $10,000 if you want the dual battery version. And of course, what we're most familiar with is cargo electric bikes around $2,000, maybe even a little bit less when you look at the KBO Ranger. But a lot of our more recent cargo electric bike reviews, the Radwagon 4, the Ebikes Packagini, and of course the Flyer electric bike are right around $2,000. So this still does cost significantly more, but the Urban Arrows are of course significantly different than the long-tailed cargo electric bikes. All right, let's start up here in the front of the bike. So they've really done an awesome job with the design of this electric bike, keeping weight low. And I think where I've really been noticing that is with the cargo bin up front, because your kids are even sitting lower than they would be on the back of, say, a Radwagon, sitting on the rear with a Tuliep Maxi. So this bike feels more stable by far than any other cargo electric bike that we've personally reviewed. And that frame design helps lower the center of gravity as well. You have the mid-drive motor, which has the weight nice and low, as well as the battery. And then you have the nice step-through frame. So really excellent geometry. I'm a huge fan of just the way this bike rides, how smooth it is. It feels like a very premium experience. All right, let's jump in the front. And as I go through some of these components, they might vary a little bit to the United States version, so something to be aware of. But I think generally you're gonna have quality components throughout, especially when you're spending $6,000 on an electric bike. Up front, we have these nice Schwalbe Big Ben Plus tires. Now these tires are 20 inches by 2.15 inches, obviously set up for street riding, and they have the reflective sidewalls. There's actually a lot of reflectors around this electric bike, as I'll point out. You can see a couple here on the front fork. Up front, we have a through axle, and we also have Tektro rotors on here, 180 millimeters. As far as brakes on this particular model, obviously hydraulic, you want that increased stopping power, especially when you can hold so much weight. These are G-Spec Trail S brakes. They perform really well. We had this thing fully loaded with my wife and both my kids, really pushing the weight capacity on this bike, but they did say it has a 250 kilogram capacity. And with that high weight capacity, I think the limitation is more what the rider is comfortable hauling as opposed to the actual capacity of this frame, because it can just hold so much. As this is a bike made for the city, we have fenders, both front and rear, and they come down nice and low, keeping the frame nice and clean. We have this integrated light up here. The front one is actually pretty bright. And then we have reflectors here on both sides a nice addition. And of course you need a way for this front wheel to turn. So this is the arm that comes out to turn the wheel. You can see the handlebars moving up there. Jumping into the bucket, we have the Urban Arrow emblem up front. And then we have this material that reminds me very much of styrofoam, maybe even cooler type material. I'm sure that's to keep weight down, but then you really have this roll cage, which is nice and sturdy and adds to just the high weight capacity of this electric bike. One thing I wanted to point out, a nice touch, is they have this cutout here. That's of course so when your kid gets into the bucket, they can step there and swing their leg over. A nice touch. And what Urban Arrow has really focused on is adding a bunch of accessories. Probably the accessory we've seen the most is the rain cover. Being here in the Netherlands where it rains a lot, I think that's an accessory that most people purchase. And I have to say, out of all the cargo electric bikes, I think I've seen Urban Arrows the most. In fact, you almost can't walk a few blocks without seeing at least one. Inside the bucket here, we have this metal plate here, and that of course is reinforced below it as well with the frame of the bucket. We have the two nice child seats here, and you can also purchase a smaller seat up here in case you have 3 children. My wife really wanted to point out the ease of these buckles. You can do it with just one hand. They snap into place with kind of a magnet, and then you can squeeze this and they release as well. So big fan of those straps. Let's jump into the cockpit here. You can see we have an adjustable stem here, which really allows you to be in a very upright riding position. And I wanted to also point out the location of the cranks. Now this is more of a pedal forward design, which is super comfortable, especially if you're going long distances. And the seat-tube angle is also more pronounced. So a key difference on this electric bike compared to the cargo electric bikes that we're used to. Moving on to the handlebars, they are using these really nice locking ergon grips. These are very similar to the GP ones that I recommend. And of course, on the right side, it is shorter to accommodate for the shifter. We'll get into that in a little bit. Let's jump into the display here quickly. This is the Bosch system. Black and white display here. Holding the plus button is going to turn on the lights. And then of course you have your various pedal assist modes: off, eco, tour, sport, and turbo. And at every level of assist, it also gives you an estimated range. And you can also enter walk mode with the button beneath the display. These are actually TRP brakes, a brand I am very familiar with, make really high quality components, and of course they perform extremely well. I did have to do some hard stopping with all 3 of them up in the front, and it had no problem bringing me to a stop, though I was traveling at a slower speed just for safety reasons. Let's jump into the shifter. This is the Enviolo system. It's an internally geared hub. I've featured it on my videos with the V-Volt electric bike, and I have to say, after riding it on the Urban Arrow a bunch, I like this even more. It's just super smooth, super quiet. You don't have to worry about a derailleur. So I think we're going to continue to see the Enviolo systems on other electric bikes, though keep in mind it does add quite a bit to the cost. So how this shifter works is you basically have unlimited, or how much you can modulate the shifter as far as number of steps with the gearing. I always like to point out the cable management, and due to the uniqueness of this frame, they're able to just put the cables right under beneath the stem here, and so it's a nice and clean look. Moving on to the battery, again, this is the Bosch system. So this is the PowerPack 400. You can also get it with the PowerPack 500, and you can also get dual batteries on here as well. That's going to be closer to the $10,000 price point. And if you've dug into the specs of other cargo electric bikes, especially the ones that we've reviewed on this channel, these are below average as far as capacity, though you do get some efficiency gains with the mid-drive motor. Speaking of motor, this is the Bosch Active Line Plus, the most entry-level Bosch motor that you can get on the Urban Arrows. And to be honest with you, for our riding on flat ground here, I can't imagine that you would need more power. Now, if you did live in an area with significant hills, maybe you would want to upgrade the motor, but at least riding around here, you're not traveling at very high speeds. It's lots of stop and go, lots of stoplights. So I think if it were me personally, I'd save the money and just go with the Active Line Plus. Moving on to the saddle, I'm not sure if this is the stock saddle, but it is Cordo branded. I found it to be pretty comfortable. Thought I would point out this rear light integrated into the battery, something that maybe they have upgraded on some of the newer models of Urban Arrow. I'm actually not sure what year this is, though it is nice to have additional visibility, but a lot of times on these rear lights, they leave a little bit to be desired. I wanted to talk about security because these are expensive electric bikes. They have this Ebikes wheel lock here, which is really nice, and you can turn the key and lock the wheel in place. Some of you might be curious about this Lock Ride battery lock. I think it's really cool. I've seen it on a lot of the urban arrows around the city, and they've paired it with this Ebikes titanium padlock. I'd love to see something similar to protect other electric bike batteries from being stolen because, of course, they are a target as well. Moving on to the rear, again, we have those hydraulic disc brakes, but I wanted to show off these 203 millimeter rotors in the rear. Again, 180 up front, but a giant one in the rear for increased stopping power. We have the speed sensor here for the Bosch system, and of course, a rear fender, as well as a rear reflector. I already mentioned the NVOLO New Vinci. So this is the internally geared hub. It actually looks like a motor, but there's actually gears in there. And then you do have a chain behind this guard, kind of like a single speed, but of course your gears are internal to this hub, which is really nice. And of course it's protected. And finally, the kickstand. I absolutely love this design of the kickstand. It is way better than any cargo electric bike that I've reviewed. And then to take off, when you're ready to go, you can simply roll the bike forward and then it pops up. And to engage the kickstand, you can simply use your foot here and rock the bike backwards. That's a closer look at the Urban Arrow. Now let's get into some third-person riding footage, and we'll give you our concluding thoughts on the Urban Arrow cargo electric bikes. We don't often have e-bike envy, given we are lucky enough to have a large assortment of e-bikes to ride at any given time. The Urban Arrow, though, might be the exception. Here in the Netherlands, the style of these e-bikes are called Bakfiets, and they sure are popular. We first fell in love with cargo e-bikes back in 2018 when we purchased our first e-bike, a Rad Power Bikes Radwagon. Don't get me wrong, long-tail cargo e-bikes have their advantages, which I'll get to in a second, but the Urban Arrow, or really any front-loading cargo e-bike, is superior in a lot of ways. And I'm not just saying that because it has higher quality components, though yes, obviously a $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 e-bike is going to feel nicer, but the advantage for us is really having the weight so low to the ground. I'm not going to say it was easy maneuvering close to 200 pounds up front, but it was way less sketchy than it would have been on our Radwagon. Basically, at higher speeds, I felt very confident, and at slower speeds, well, I'll just say I had my legs at the ready to put down if needed. And even in a country where you'll see 2 or even 3 kids riding on a more standard frame, even non-e-bikes, we still got plenty of looks. The selfie stick didn't help. Of course, the fact that we could even fit everyone up front is impressive. Up front, you have room for up to 3 kiddos or a giant load of groceries. It even looks like a gigantic cooler. I also really like the add-on accessories available. If you're really making a leap to a car replacement, or at least a partial car replacement with an e-bike like this, they're absolutely key. We also reviewed a bunch bike last year, which is a similar design, though with 2 wheels up front. The 3 wheels adds to the stability, but the bunch bike feels more like biking a shopping cart around compared to the Urban Arrow. I personally preferred the 2-wheeled Urban Arrow, though this is probably something that's user preference. Still, the bunch bikes are worth checking out as it's a good option and more affordable than the Urban Arrows at around $4,300, link down in the description. So what are the reasons you might shy away from an Urban Arrow, ignoring the price? For one, if you want a throttle, you won't find that on an Urban Arrow. That would be nice to get started when you're hauling significantly large loads, but the low gears and throwing it in turbo works as well. In fact, riding with all this weight, I still wasn't in the lowest gear. And secondly, and this might differ depending on where you live in the United States, the Urban Arrow simply isn't as nimble for tight turns as a long-tail cargo e-bike. It's not like you're going to be able to make quick cuts up sidewalks or navigate around stoplights, etc. In our leaves a little bit to be desired, at least bike-wise city in Wisconsin, I have a few spots where we often ride where we'd have to plan an alternate route. In the Netherlands, which is one of the best places to ride bikes, that's simply a non-issue. Overall, I think the Urban Arrow is a great option if it fits your locale, and I'd love to do a more longer term test on this e-bike, so perhaps we can get our hands on one in the United States. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fun factor. It's hard to describe how fun it is to be able to ride an e-bike with the kids and kids at heart in tow, just loving the fresh air. Let us know what you think of the Urban Arrow e-bikes in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.